I thought my name was 2 syllables for the longest time. Ryan seemed pretty clear to me until they informed me it's actually only one. Look at these folks from Louisiana. They're about to tell it. Ryan, very good. Y'all can call me Ryan or Ryan, whatever works for you. I speak Northern and Southern, and I would be happy to tell your Southern name as we go along. Like my dad's name, Tim. Does anyone know how to say Tim down south? It's Tim, T-E-E-Y-U-M, so it gains a syllable or it loses one, and you never know what's going to happen. But I'm going to make a confession. I did not like country music when I moved down here. Where are my country music fans? Are you here? All right, new country, old country, doesn't matter, both kinds. All right, there's a great scene from the movie Blues Brothers where they pull into a honky-tonk. If you guys don't know what honky-tonk is, they're 84 right here if you want to... I know this is a teetotaler group, and no one here is actually going drinking later. You came here to appreciate people walking in and out of bars and never participate and go home and watch Netflix till 8 p.m. Is that what you're doing here on this tour? All right, so that's not true. All right, so honky tonk is basically a venue that plays country music and has alcohol. If only there were a few of those places. Is that why you came here all the way from Great Britain to actually participate in the honky tonks? But here, walk me this way if you don't care. Look at that red brick building with the white trim. What's the name of that, by the way? The Ryman Auditorium. Who's going to the Grand Ole Opry? I got to think about it. Did you go last night or Tuesday? So the very reason we're called Music City, this rural radio program that started in 1925. And I don't want anyone on this tour to feel old, but if I have to feel old, we are all going to do it together. Grand Ole Opry started as a radio show in 1925. When's 2025? That's way in the future. Am I right? Yeah, that's 5.5 years from now, in case you're curious. So, all right, you want me to really freak you guys out? Everyone get an idea what you were doing in 1998. Everyone have an idea? The babies born that year are drinking tonight on Broadway of Legal Assistant. When you look at it that way, it really just makes your world just crumble into this tiny, tiny ball. But that is where your old country stars would play. 1943 to 1974. Those of you who went to the Opry went to Opryland. And very often your old country stars. Now guys, one time I was on a tour, I said I liked old country, not new country so much. I had this young lady on this tour who was 14, and she goes, Ryan, I love old country. I went, really? Like who? And she goes, like Tim McGraw. And I had a heart attack right there. So Tim McGraw is not old country from my point of view. But 43 to 74, you'd be old country from my point of view. And very often they would walk over to that purple building when they were done. Who's been inside there? That's Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, world's most famous honky-tonk. All right, you guys know what a honky-tonk is now. They play what kind of music? Both kinds, country and western. So we're going to check it out. Follow me this way. We are going to head down to a record store. Those of you who thought records were on the way out have never met a hipster in your entire lives. Everything that's coming out of your mouth. But this record store has been here for 72 years, home of the Midnight Jamboree, and I think we should go inside. Guys, if you get a little bit closer, you can actually see a movie poster right there. And the name of that movie is Coal Miner's Daughter. Who's seen the movie Coal Miner's Daughter? Who can sing it with me here at 10 a.m. in the morning? Come on, Vivian. You know, Vivian told me she really wanted to sing in Nashville. I'm proud to be a coal miner's daughter. All right, that was from 1980. Sissy Spacek, who's playing Loretta Lynn in the movie, won an Oscar for that role. One of the greatest acting performances of all time, if you want my personal opinion. And it was actually filmed here. So it was actually filmed at the Ryman. They did one of these long, where's William? He's actually down here doing something else. So the longest crane shot ever where they actually went out of the Ryman and they went through the doors and they did this live. It was an awesome shot. For those of you who are filmographers, I'll have you look at that later. But this was the site of the Midnight Jamboree. Take a look at these black and white photos right over here, guys. You can actually see where Ernest Tubb, he would be old country from my point of view. If you want to see what he looked like, this is a great photo of him here with the Texas Troubadours. You might even know one of his contemporaries. This is Hank Williams. Hank Williams also had a son that played country music. I can never remember his son's name, though. It is Hank Williams Jr. Thank you. I forget that one every single time. And so when he actually does the Midnight Jamboree, and here we're going to start honky-tonkin',
he's actually able to talk to this young man and get him to continue his music career. So Ernest was kind of like the Tim McGraw of his day. He would host people here in the Midnight Jamboree. That's depicted in the movie Coal Miner's Daughter. And this young man I'm talking about was a polite young man from Mississippi. And we know that he was polite because he would get on stage and he would say, thank you very much, thank you. And he was always out of breath. And so he was always running a 5K before every show, and he would show up late for the show and say, I'm sorry. Either that or he was addicted to smack. Go ahead and tell him what smack is. I had this tour the other day, and these kids were here, and this woman goes, Ryan, be careful. I was like, they don't know what smack is. A 1977 term for what? For heroin, in case you're keeping score. All right, so that's, who am I talking about, y'all? Wise men say, and then he had that hip problem, and he was always trying to correct it with karate later in life. Elvis Presley was a young kid. He was 19 years old when he actually played the Grand Ole Opry. He chose a song called Blue Moon of Kentucky. Who's ever heard the song Blue Moon of Kentucky? Go ahead, sing it. Whatever. Are you going to do it? Come on. Oh, come on. If you got warm up. There he's warm up. Did you see him? Did you see him? He did the single leg warm up on the hip. All right, the Elvis version was like that. The original was this bluegrass song, a waltz, in fact, that went like this. Blue Moon of Kentucky, keep on shining. Guess what Elvis did? Cranked up the tempo, played it twice as fast as the original, and they didn't even know what to call that new style of music at the time. They were calling it rock and hillbilly music. Then they called it rockabilly, and then what they call it? Rock and roll. He played his rock and roll version of Blue Moon of Kentucky, and then all these old timers sitting in the audience did not know what to think about what they were witnessing. Elvis said he strummed the last chord on his guitar, and it was dead silence. They didn't even boo him. They were going, what in the hell is this? So Elvis was dejected, and he thought he was a big failure. He comes and finds Ernest Tubb at his record shop. Again, you saw a statue when see him here at Texas Troubadours. He was kind of a big deal at the time. Sits Elvis down, says, son, you need to target the 18 to 35 demographic. All right, he didn't say it like that, but he said, the kids are going to love rock and roll, and he was right. But guess what happens to country music record sales once rock and roll takes off? Who is in marketing? Who can tell me what market share is on the store? I had a kid one time. He's about 8, and he's looking at me like this, and he goes like this. I go, kid, you are going to be an economist. That is a perfect graph. So it takes a guy by the name of Chet Atkins to find a way to modify country music. Take a look at that giant album cover by the floor right there, guys. Do you see where it says Chet Atkins at home? He's the guy that starts modifying country music in the late 50s, early 60s, trying to make it more palatable to a new audience. And guess what? We will be at the Chet Atkins statue in roughly 60 minutes, depending on how fast we're there. If you check my Instagram feed, gotten 317 people to hop up next to Chet and sing a song of their choosing. Who's going to be 318 from this group?
Now we do have a skyscraper of note in this town, y'all. Some of you are from the Northeast are looking around going, where is this skyscraper that you speak of? That is the tallest building in the state of Tennessee, if you did not know. And it has a nickname. Anyone know the nickname of that building? The Batman building. I think it looks like a taser personally, but taser building, that would scare the kids away. If you want to know what that was supposed to be, it was supposed to be in the shape of a receiver of a desktop phone. You know, like the 2 pins on a desktop phone receiver? You said the phone. No one said it looked like that. They all said it looked like Batman. So the architect's loss is your gain. If you ever get lost and you don't know where to go, just look up and find Batman. Then you can find Broadway. We're going to walk right toward it. Have you done this diagonal cross yet? This is perfectly legal. Those of you from the Northeast do it all the time. It's called jaywalking, and you're very good at it. So this is a legal jaywalk that we're about to do. And we're going to head towards Margaritaville, and then way down there, you can actually see this sign that they've painted on the side of the building right there. It says, Ole Red. That building is currently owned by the sexiest man alive. And who's that, Viv? Is that guy that came with you? Absolutely. You came in second place. There you go. It's now Blake Shelton. So this was a bank back in the day. Now it's owned by Blake Shelton. Kind of a new trend, as I was saying, where you've got these artists putting their names on the front of buildings. But tell you what, walk with me to the corner here. To your right. You can only make out the S and the H right there, but that is indeed the Johnny Cash Museum. And as I was saying, I was a big skeptic of that place when it opened. I thought they were going to pardon the pun, cash in on his name and give you a very whitewashed version of his life. Guess what? They don't pull any punches. They give you the whole story. There's a definition of country music that goes like this. 3 chords and the truth. The good, the bad, the ugly, yet the truth nonetheless. And they give you the whole story there. Who was the love of Johnny's life? What was her name? June Carter, yeah, they go into her death, how that affected him. They say you can die of a broken heart. I would say in Johnny's case, that's absolutely true. So I tell you what, welcome me this way. We've got 12 seconds, and we're gonna head towards that building right there. Oldest standing saloon in Nashville. Currently the Hard Rock Cafe gift shop. Saloons invariably had 3 levels. There were 3 distinct services you could procure in this building before Prohibition hit statewide in 1910. And go ahead, Sheila, what were those services? They were polite conversation, reading, and yoga. What were you thinking? Did you guys think something totally different?
Who remembers the show Name That Tune? Yeah, I know. So some people have asked me, how do you know that? I watched that with my dad all the time. He just slayed constantly. I was always in awe. He could name that tune in 0 notes. I know, he was that good. All right, now take a look at the original floor of the Silver Dollar Saloon. This 12 by 12 square is all we have left of the original interior. Those are actual silver dollars from the era. They're all between 1890 and 1895. I think I've checked the year on all of them. And so this tile actually covered the entire length of the floor at one time. When you were coming in a place like this, you would not have seen the Hard Rock Cafe playing 1980s music videos at the time, or this retail counter. You would have seen a bar. 2nd floor and 3rd floor, who figured those out? Those activities that were there in the 1890s are currently illegal in the state of Tennessee. Vivian, we already went over this. Polite conversation, reading, and yoga, and you keep thinking prostitution and gambling, and that is dead right. All right, that is exactly what it was. Vivian gave me a look. Now, guys, you got to know something, though. Down south, people are a little bit more indirect than they are, for example, in the Northeast. Down south, though, what do you hear? A house of ill repute, or ladies of the night. Who's ever heard a Southerner say this phrase? Bless your heart. What does that mean? Can anyone tell me? All right, you gonna help us out here, Sheila, and tell us? It's hard to explain. Look, she's like, well, it can mean it can mean you're dumb. You're an idiot, absolutely. It can mean I feel sorry for you. One time I had 3 women from Georgia on this tour, and she goes, it means that baby's ugly. And I went, yeah, that is, you know when somebody shows you pictures of their kids and you don't want to say anything mean, so what do you say instead? Bless their hearts, absolutely. So basically, when you have a negative opinion and you don't want to say it out loud, that's what you say instead. So likewise, when we actually go to Printer's Alley today, you're going to see a little section of town that was called Printer's Alley, referring to the 3 Christian printers that were on the corner. What went on in the alley had nothing to do with church on a Sunday morning. All right, so 2nd floor, gambling. And now when I talk about gambling, people go, wait. What about your Native American reservations? Surely there are 1 or 2 of those. Those do not exist in the entire state of Tennessee. Anybody know why? Here's the short answer. It's on your $20 bill. And who's that? Andrew Jackson, a guy who's been dead a long time, so he doesn't cause any more controversy. That's over. See, look, Cleo looked at me like that. That is not true. Cleo's like, yeah, I don't think that's right. We're going to talk about Andrew Jackson and the Trail of Tears here in a moment when we actually get up towards the observation deck. Here we go, guys. You would go from floor 1 to floor 2 to floor 3, hang your head in shame, and slink out the back door. So I don't know if we've done anything to be ashamed of, but we're going out the back door too whenever you're ready. So follow me this way.
What's the name of this river, by the way, we're walking parallel to? Anybody know? The Cumberland River. Who's ever heard of the Cumberland Gap? There is a gap in the Appalachian Mountains due east, wide enough for wagon trains to fit through. Imagine you were a member of the original 13 colonies. You could move west in search of free land. What's the problem with free? There were people already here before anyone of European descent showed up. And so, again, I'm going to talk about the Trail of Tears when we talk about Jackson here in a second. Next stop, though, is the George Jones Museum and Rooftop Bar. Who's heard of George Jones? Would he be old country? I would say so. You might even know his 3rd wife. Who was that? Tammy Wynette. What was Tammy Wynette famous for singing? Stand by your man. We're going to sing it together. Y'all ready? Stand by your man. Guess how many men she stood by? She was married 5 times. But look, she stood by each man at that time, if you look at it that way.
Right there, 1924. Right where we started the tour, did anyone see where it said Pancho and Lefty's Cantina? That little middle building is from 1808, to give you an idea. Currently the George Jones Museum and Rooftop Bar. Now, George was no angel, by the way. He had a nickname. They called George Jones No-Show Jones. Take a wild guess why they called him that. He wouldn't show up to play. And why is that? Because he was a yoga instructor committed to, what are you talking about, Sheila? A drunk? I would never. He was an infamous drunk. He would drink so heavily he would pass out. One time I had a guy in the store who was 84, and he goes, Ryan, I went to 5 George Jones shows when he was alive. I went, really? How many did he show up for? And he goes, 0.5, passed out in the middle of the. So you don't want to get George Jones levels of intoxicated. You're going to go downtown later. When he would sober up, though, he would come up with ballads, especially of all time. One in particular called He Stopped Loving Her Today. Does anyone know this one? All right, you're going to help me sing this, Sheila, because this song makes me cry almost every single time. You know how old country music is sad? This is the saddest of sad songs. It's about a man whose wife leaves him early in the marriage. And he tells her, I'll never stop loving you, but you keep hearing, he stopped loving her today. Why'd he stop loving her? Take a wild guess. He died. You find out it's his funeral. His best friend is singing the song to him at the funeral. And he's saying, he finally got over her for good. How do you get, look, you got absolutely, and it's like, oh my God, that is terrible. Yeah, imagine hearing the song now. Does anyone know what happens if you take an old country record and play it backwards? What happens? You get your dog back, your car back, the crops start growing again. And that is a true story. Everything else is consensus history. That was a fact. All right, if you want to learn about George and Tammy, they've got a great museum here. I really like the rooftop bar here. It is my favorite in the city. The rooftop bar opens at 11. And we're going to head down this way, though, where we've got one subject of the tour that is not of our species. Butler is great for illustrating the changes that Nashville went through in the early 90s. So in 1991, we elect this mayor by the name of Phil Bredesen. And he goes, we're going to clean up downtown. We're going to make this a great place for tourists to come. They thought he was out of his mind when he proposed this. This was not the nicest area. Who's ever been to Times Square in New York?
Yes.
If you go to Times Square today, what do you see? Disney stuff. It's nice.
Yeah.
And it was just like that in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Well, tell us what was there. I had a New Yorker, he goes, if you wanted to show your kids peep shows, it was great. So he's basically saying you would have not have taken a family down there. And so they go through their whole urban renewal process. Who remembers that term? I was reading an article the other day and they go, there's this new thing happening called gentrification. I go, that is not new. When I was a kid, they called it urban renewal. They said it was the cure for urban blight. And so when they're refacing these buildings on 2nd Avenue, this stray dog starts sidling up to the construction crews. Rather than shoo him away, they adopted him. Did you see his paw prints? All right, look at the concrete right there, guys. You see that 7/7/1994 Butler and his pal Sporty? So if you're a dog and you pull this off, you are the Gandhi of dogs. So I'm going to give you guys the only science that I discuss on this tour. Are you ready? This is methodologically sound. Every guest I've ever had who's approached Butler and pet him or rubbed his belly before we headed to the observation deck, they have never fallen, tripped, or had an accident. And I go, that is science. And if it's not, what can it hurt? That's all I'm saying.
All right, now when you wait for that light to change, we're going to head to the observation deck here and get a good view of the river. And we can take some pictures up there. But Andrew Jackson, having signed into law the Indian Removal Act, he actually made a name for himself in Nashville, though. So this is Nashville Public Square. He fought a couple duels here. One against Thomas Hart Benton. Who's heard of Thomas Hart Benton? Who's heard of Bentonville, Arkansas? Who's heard of Walmart? All right, so Walmart's we're going to go to Walmart. We'll start at Walmart and go all the way back to Thomas Hart Benton. So Thomas Hart Benton was a young kid when he moved to Nashville. Jackson was an old man. He was in his 30s. And he actually got in a duel with Thomas Hart Benton. Benton ends up shooting him in the arm, and they were going to amputate, and Jackson very famously said, I shall keep my arm. And then he was off to fight the Creek Indians 2 weeks later. So was Jackson a tough guy? Sure. Was he a good guy? Benton, later when he became senator of Missouri, he was being interviewed and they said, do you know the president, Senator Benton? He goes, yes, I do. I shot him myself. All right, who's ever heard of this guy? Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. Well, Jenny, you said nothing. You can see that this is common knowledge that he is king. She had no idea what I was talking about there, y'all. Have you heard of Davy Crockett? You're from the UK, so that, there you go. You didn't know he was king of the wild frontier, born on a mountaintop in Tennessee.
Killed a bear when he was only 3.
There you go. Killed him. They said he killed him a bar, which is a bear, when he was only 3. Here's what they don't tell you though: the bear was 3 years old. He was full grown and had a rifle. So when you look at it that way, it's really not that impressive. So follow me this way, y'all. You can actually see there's a progression in time if you want to look at some of these plaques that they have here. But this again, Nashville Public Square. So Andrew Jackson, as I was saying, fought a couple duels here. If you look at, headed straight that way, look at those Greek columns. So again, you're going to see Greek revival architecture all over the city. A lot of the elites post-Civil War, again, elite for lack of a better word, wanted us to be known as the Athens of the South, a center of culture and learning. You now know that the hillbillies won. But when you stand here and you think about the Trail of Tears, this wasn't a done deal, as I was saying, even at the time. Jackson had his dissenters. Davy Crockett was one of them. And then he went over the will of the Supreme Court. Supreme Court essentially said the following: you cannot move the Cherokee until we decide what their citizenship status is. Jackson was not a guy for details. He basically told the army, round them up anyway, and force march them this way. And so about 40% of your native populations died along the route. So one time I had this guy on this tour and this young lady, and they started bickering about something regarding modern life. And what's that? Should he or should he not be on the $20 bill? This is still ongoing. And so this was a done deal 2.5 years ago. He was going to be removed from one side of the 20, replaced by, does anyone know by whom? Harriet Tubman, not just a woman, also a former slave, also somebody who helped run the Underground Railroad, about as diametrically opposed to Jackson as you can get. And these two people in the middle of my tour 2.5 years ago started bickering about it, and I had an Australian on that tour. Where are my Australians? This guy steps in the middle of these folks and he goes, guys, wait a minute here, don't fight, because if you think about it, it'll still be worth $20, won't it? And they went, yeah, I guess. And he goes, then who cares? So maybe that's your opinion on Andrew Jackson. And if you have another one you want to share with me personally, you can do so as we walk to Printer's Alley. All right, so here you'll see the Corinthian columns right here in what is now, well, it was a bank. What is it now? The thing we have the biggest shortage of in the city, and what's that? Bars. We need more bars in this town, absolutely. Housing. So you've got shops, restaurants, and bars, absolutely, but places to live. So when you stand here and take a look, these are banks, and this was Union Street. Union Street also was called the Wall Street of the South. Now, guys, you're going to hear this suffix of the South all the time. In fact, Jackson was called the Napoleon of the South. You've got, they'll often call Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt and Duke are arguing over who gets to be called Yale and who gets to be called the Harvard of the South. And they're always arguing over this. But the Wall Street of the South, financial services still is a big industry here in Nashville. So welcome me this way, guys. We're going to stop here at the Island. In fact, when you go to the Grand Ole Opry, you're going to notice really quick that you're on the radio. Guess how you'll know? You have to sit through the commercials. Yeah, and it says on the air at the same time. That is a good indication. It says on air right there. 650 WSM radio. And WSM was also the call sign of the radio station, and also the company that actually created the radio station had this as a slogan: We Shield Millions. What kind of company would have We Shield Millions as a slogan? All right, I had somebody say Trojan the other day, which I thought was hilarious, but it is insurance, in case you were wondering. And so, follow me this way. Don't worry, I can block traffic like the Titans can block for Marcus Mariota. You have nothing to worry about. Does that put you at ease? This is Printer's Alley, called Printer's Alley for the same reason that bless your heart doesn't really mean bless your heart. So, this alley was called the Men's Quarter by journalists and historians post-Civil War. Nobody in Nashville would have called it the Men's Quarter. That is way too direct. And y'all know that Southerners never say things direct. There were 3 Christian printers down on the corner on Church Street. What one on the alley had nothing to do with church on a Sunday morning? Did we mention these 3 activities on this tour, Arlene? I totally forgot. They were polite conversation, reading, and yoga. What were you guys thinking? All right, no kids around? All right, drinking, gambling, and prostitution. In fact, when you get close, you're going to actually see depictions of burlesque dancers up here on the right. This was the original nightlife hotspot of Nashville. Has anyone ever opened up a drawer next to your bedside in a hotel? What do you find inside? Bible, yeah, Gideon's. Look on the publication page of any Gideon's Bible. Still says Nashville, Tennessee to this day. Walk with me this way. What you gonna do if you really don't wanna dance? There you go. This is a really good bar called Bourbon Street Blues and Boogie Bar. Look at this guy, the brass tables. That's original. Take a look at the limestone base right there. Again, usually you can pick out these original buildings. Every time there's limestone, then you have the brick on top. This one is a full tear down and a rebuild. I have no idea why you would call a brothel the Climax. That makes no sense to me. But in the 1880s, it was called the Climax Saloon and the brass stables. And so this whole area has gone through a kind of a renaissance. Some of the buildings were torn down and rebuilt. I thought they did a pretty good job conserving the look. In fact, I'm going to give you some pop culture. The most watched country music video of all time was filmed in this alley by a little known artist by the name of Carrie Underwood. Who's ever heard of her? She's going to be famous one day. I want you guys to watch out for that name. She films a video where she beats the living crap out of a truck with a baseball bat in that parking garage down. You know this one, Arlene. You're going to help me sing this, aren't you? I dug my key into the side of his pretty little souped up. Even Kearney is singing this one. Absolutely. There you go. This is country feminism, y'all. Where if a guy cheats on you, what do? You mess up his truck, yeah, with a baseball bat. All right, so if you've never heard the premise of this song, basically Carrie Underwood has a lover who has jilted her, so she takes it out on his truck. And so one time on a tour, I asked, what is this song teaching our children? Most of the women said pretty much unanimously, he better think about that next time before he cheats. Name of the song. And then I had a guy go, buy a cheaper truck. So that's option number 2. You can look at it that way. So follow me this way when you're ready. Now, Skull was a real guy. His real name was David Shulman. And he would appear on the greatest, most well-acted show in network television history. And that show was called Hee Haw. Who's seen the show Hee Haw? Go ahead, Viv. You got to look at these youngins and explain Hee Haw to them. Go ahead. So Skull would host people here all the time. Originally, it was actually filmed in LA. So it was a rural program. I had this guy, he was going to explain this to these young folks on my tour, and he goes, all right, it was Laugh-In for rednecks. And I go, now you got to explain what Laugh-In is. But a rural radio program, I'm sorry, rural radio, what the heck about it? That's the operator. A television program for a rural audience. And so Skull, after this was filmed at the Grand Ole Opry stage, not the Ryman, but where you guys went to see the Opry, is actually filmed there. If you do the tour, they'll actually show you some of the old studios that were there. He would have people hang out here. Now, guys, the bar is actually going to open at 3 o'clock. This is great for craft cocktails here, but let me show you something. When you walk this way, you can actually see how Skulls is the basement section of the Southern Turf, which was another house of ill repute. Who's ever heard of a Dylan tune, Lay Lady Lay?
Yes.
All right, yeah, that's on side B of Nashville Skyline. And Johnny sang on a couple songs on that album as well. And who's ever heard of Paul McCartney? You guys think I'm joking, don't you? I remember Paul McCartney did a song with Rihanna and Kanye West called 4 or 5 Seconds from Wilding, and I saw them post the video on Twitter, and I saw all these youngins commenting, I don't know who that old dude is with the guitar, but his stuff is going to blow up now that he's with Rihanna. And I went, yeah, that's Paul McCartney, kid. All right, so he's going to be really famous, I agree. So Paul McCartney, when he left the Beatles, he started a band called Wings, not one of his most famous Wings songs, but it was called Sally G. That was about a burlesque dancer they actually met at Skull's Rainbow Room back in the day. There's a story that goes that Linda was jealous and made him change the name to Sally G. Her real stage name was Diane G, but I'm not totally convinced. I think Sally G just sounded better in the context of the song. But even Paul McCartney was here for 6 months, and he would hang out at Skull's Rainbow Room, but Skull was found murdered in that building in 1998. Now, guys, I am not a huge fan of ghost stories. One time, the ghost tour company asked me if I would do a ghost tour for them, and I said, I will, but everything out of my mouth is going to go like this. This is unsubstantiated, however, and the 8th time you hear me say that, you're going to get really, really bored. But I tell you what, walk with me this way. $19.95. Second floor is actually, I just got this intel. Frank, the Sinatra family will rent out the Sinatra name only in very specific cases where they have these lounges. They're actually going to open the 4th Frank Sinatra lounge actually on the 2nd floor here. There's a law office there on the, I'm sorry, it's going to be on the 3rd. The law office is still here on the 2nd, but that top one was an apartment. It's got those 3 levels you're used to, polite conversation, reading, and yoga, and that was where Bo Skull and Ike Johnson stayed. Ike Johnson in 1910, when Tennessee passed Prohibition, they didn't exactly give everyone who owned a bar $100,000 saying, we're so sorry we just killed your business. Here you go. This will help you get on your feet. They just cut it off, and then he did take a pistol, put it to his temple, and commit suicide. So this is why people say, ghosts are in that building. Here's what I'm going to say, guys. I love the cocktails here. The kitchen opens at 5. The food is 5 out of 5. If you run into Skull or Ike Johnson, please get these ghosts on camera. They never sit for interviews. If you can get Skull or Ike Johnson, or any ghost for that matter, to answer one historically pertinent question and send me the YouTube link, I'll make your tour free and everybody else's. Remember that movie, I See Dead People? I think that would be awesome. Imagine I could summon Davy Crockett at will. Don't you think I would be really popular at that point? Here he is. Let's talk to Davy Crockett himself. All right, now look at the boutique hotel revolution. Who's staying at a boutique hotel here in Nashville? All right, there's the Climax. The one that's tall and skinny right there, that is the Brass Stables. Imagine, though, you wanted to outdo your competition by, I don't know, putting a Greyhound bus on top of your building. If only you could find a 1956 Scenic Cruiser and take 2 cranes and lift the front end and the back end and then stick it right on top of your former office building and call it the Bobby Hotel. All right, and so immediately when they did this, I emailed the PR director and I kept asking one question, well, actually 2. One was why, and 2 was, who's Bobby? And so she goes, Ryan, we will tell you when we open, I promise. So I rolled in there last year, and she goes, Ryan, isn't this funny? This was our marketing strategy, whereby we did all this weird stuff to get you to talk about us. And Bobby is whoever you want him or her to be. And I go, that is a non-answer. And so it was made up in a focus group. They answer the phone. They go, hi, it's Bobby. Bobby is nobody, as far as I can tell. So if you find out who Bobby is, I'll make your tour free as well. But you have to have an actual name and give me the actual owner, because it's Freedom of Information Act. I guess I have to go that far. So I have never, however, had a drink inside a bus parked on a building. That is a bar lounge, in case you want to know what it's doing up there. So there's your chance to do exactly that. So follow me this way, guys.
But this was 1902. Somebody got a great idea, put shops, restaurants, and a food court all under one roof. What do we call that nowadays? A mall. So this is Nashville's first shopping mall before we knew what a mall was. And here you're going to see some throwback restaurants. All right, follow me this way, y'all. This is very southeastern. Look up there and you can see where it says meat and 3. Who knows what a meat and 3 is? You get a meat and 3. Science, very good. I could tell you understood this on an intellectual level. I could also tell. So if you go west of the Mississippi River, they start dying out really quick. If you go to Arkansas, they don't have them. You get a meat and 3 vegetables. That's how they say it down here, y'all. Would anyone like to take a wild guess, though, what counts as a vegetable down south? Vegetables like this. Vegetable. All right. Mac and cheese. Absolutely. That is an excellent vegetable. See, he must have grown up here in Tennessee. All right, so, guys, you don't want to eat the southern way every day of your life. We are second in heart disease only to Scotland, where they have deep-fried Mars bars. So maybe we don't go that far. But once or twice, if you want to go to meat and 3, Anthony Bourdain, when he was still alive, he went to one called Danjor's. That one is actually very good. Arnold's Country Kitchen. And if you forget any of this stuff, guys, you can call me or text me anytime. I do have to warn you, though. Somebody once texted me at 3 in the morning from a place called Grumpy's. Did anyone see it? We walked right by it. Yeah, it was the bail bonds. Yeah, absolutely. So if you're at Grumpy's bail bonds at 3 in the morning, we need to find somebody who's going to be raging all night. And that would be Kearney, of course. Kearney, you go and pick him up anytime, because you're going to be partying until like 4 in the morning. Am I right?
He's got my number.
He's got your number. Or you're about to tell us that you're a lawyer at the same time. I had a guy wants to go, yeah, you can call me anytime. I'm a lawyer and I can practice in the state of Tennessee. So sure, call me anytime. It's going to be $400 an hour. All right, follow me this way whenever you're ready. Has anyone ever eaten lunch at a lunch counter at a 5 and dime store?
Yes. Woolworths.
When's the last time you were in a Woolworths?
Oh, they don't have
A while ago.
long time ago.
Guess what? Woolworths is open again in this town, believe it or not. It's the old 5 and dime Woolworths that was made into a restaurant just a year and a half ago. And they have a replica of the lunch counter. F.W. Woolworth was kind of like the Ray Kroc of his day. And so it's a 5 and let's sing some Bryan Adams. Y'all ready? I bought my real first 6-string, bought it at the 5 and dime. Very good. Who's ever heard of bargain basement prices? Where were those? Tell us, Ben. The bargain and Woolworths. They were at Woolworths in the bargain basement. Now it's a restaurant, but 5 and dime stores. It was kind of like a dollar store with a deli. That's the easiest way to explain it. So follow me this way. All right, now when you look behind me, guys, people would have been shopping here back in the day. Take a look at these black and white photos right over here. This one right here that's labeled number 16. You can actually see the aisles. All right, so look at that bottom left photo though, right here. You might know who this is. This is Representative John Lewis. Who's ever heard of John Lewis? Last surviving member of the speakers at the March on Washington, where Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. And so when you look at that, he is being harassed by people, and those are not police officers. If you ever watch an interview with John Lewis, he will often say that the police were not the problem when he was doing what were called lunch counter sit-ins. So if you didn't know, Tennessee, just like every southern state, was segregated. We had these laws on the books that were called Jim Crow laws, which said the following. If you didn't like the content of melanin in somebody's skin cells, you could treat them like a second-class citizen. See, if I put it that way, it sounds really stupid, doesn't it? You want me to do sexism? Are you XX or XY chromosomally paired? I need to know this, Jen, to see if you get to vote or not. See, when I say it that way, it sounds really dumb, doesn't it? Which is why I do it on purpose. So, John Lewis and others were actually doing lunch counter sit-ins, going right past the signs that would have said one of two things, white trade only or whites only. So this is a replica right here, guys. Let's get a little bit closer. You know John Lewis, but here, there's Martin Luther King, one of the few times he actually came to Nashville. A pretty significant event. He actually gave the sign of approval to what I'm gonna use the term Freedom Rider. Freedom Rider is kind of a blanket term. They were essentially students, mostly. There were 8 to be specific, that were, not all of them at the time, but most of them were going to a university called Fisk University. That is a historically black college and university. If you ever do those trolley tours, they'll often point to it. They usually don't stop there, but it was a private university, which was important because it was also the intellectual center of what was called the Civil Rights Movement. And one incident actually changed everything. There was, it was depicted right there in that photo that you see, where you have 15, 16 really tough-looking white dudes go and start beating the living crud out of the protesters. So again, guys, I don't like protester. When you think protester, you think somebody has a sign. This was very different. This was just what Gandhi did in India, and it was called non-violent resistance. So instead of actually confronting, you basically just behaved how you should be able to be treated in any context, and go right past the whites only sign, sit at the lunch counter, and say, hello, I would like something to eat, please. And then they would bring up, they actually would never say it direct, and there's one common misconception, that you were denied service. That is actually not true. They would take your money. They would say, oh yeah, we'll take your money, here's your food, now go eat outside, or go eat over here. So essentially my money's good enough, but I'm not good enough to sit here. It was working though because of something new in 1960, and that is the video camera. Who's ever heard of a video camera? Oh wait, there's one. Back in the day, this was new technology back in the day, guys. Who remembers I am so old that I remember the nightly news. Viv, you are way too young to remember this, but there was a time way back in the day. He looked at me like, I'm sarcastic all the time, sir. He looked at me like I was crazy. He's like, I think she is. Here, guess what? 15 minutes of the nightly news with some moving images can change a lot of people's minds. Gandhi was using print media, right? So when they were using his nonviolent resistance techniques, this would actually be on the nightly news. It started changing people's conception about what they thought the civil rights movement was trying to accomplish. All right, now there's one incident that changed everything. The one I was describing earlier, where they had these sit-in protesters here, they had them at Walgreens, and they had them at McClellan's, which is now an art gallery called the Reimer Gallery. And you see they essentially experience a giant beatdown, and then there's a woman in town by the name of Diane Nash, and she actually gets her law professor, a guy who is a well-to-do lawyer, he's also a civil rights attorney and a member of Nashville City Council, to defend these men and women pro bono in court. He decides to do it, and then somebody threw a wad of dynamite through his front window, and it obliterated his home. All right, so we have not seen that level of violence in Nashville. They thought that this was there were a lot of people that said this is the industrial South. This isn't the deep South. That's where all those church bombings and lynchings happen. That would never happen here, but it did. It happened right in the middle of the city. The next day, 4,000 people marched on Nashville Public Square, right where we were talking about Andrew Jackson. And so the mayor comes out, his name is Ben West, Now where you're from, no politician would ever get in front of a group of people and say, we are assessing the situation. Thank you. Please go. They do this all the time. It's like, do they do this in the United Kingdom as well? I am shocked, Anna, to find out that they do this as well. And then this woman, Diane Nash, confronts the mayor with a question no one thought to ask before. Ask him what he thinks personally about segregation. Essentially saying, not as a politician, not as a not as a public speaker, just what do you think about it? And he says, Miss Nash, I believe it's morally wrong, and that was a very big deal that they got a major metropolitan area Southern mayor to say that he thought segregation was wrong. Guess what else he says? She actually gets him to say the following: we're going to desegregate. It was a big deal. You can actually see he's kind of resigned to this. Imagine just in your own hometown, one of your own city council members' home is bombed in the middle of the night. Mayor West said, like, this is it. We're taking down all the whites only signs. And they did a week later. They interviewed West and they actually asked him a question. They asked him if he knew he was going to say that when he walked out there that day. He said, I did not. Miss Nash gave me a question as a man, and I answered it as a man as best I could. So I'm paraphrasing a little bit there, but he essentially said, I decided to be a human being that day and not actually just give him the political or party line. So I never feel like I do this justice, guys, especially this was one of the first places John Lewis was ever arrested. And you can always come back and learn more about the civil rights movement. I gotta tell you the bad news, though. The food here is really good. Now, why is this bad news? You guys know I'm trying to do this dumb marathon that I've decided to do. And now they have strawberry shortcake here, and now they have apple cobbler ice cream, and that is 850 calories, and I cannot lose weight because of this place right here. Look at Hank. He's the devil. He's the devil right there. He's tempting everyone. All right, so my dad used to come home from the bar and say, son, I was overserved tonight. So maybe I got that from him. They overserve you here. That's all their fault. All right, Paul, man. Now we're going to do So here you see one of these gray plaques. Every time there's something of historical significance in Tennessee, for that matter, you're going to see one of these. And so this is the McClellans I was talking about. And the lunch counter is so important to the civil rights movement, it's in the Smithsonian to this day. Now watch your step as we walk this way. We're going to actually walk down towards the Chet Atkins statue. And now the thing about Chet, he never wanted to be a music producer. He only wanted to play guitar. He actually did this song called Yankee Doodle Dixie, where if you listen to this song, you will swear to God it's two guitarists, one playing Yankee Doodle Dandy and the other playing Dixie. That's Chet. He's playing two songs at the same time, which is insanely hard to do. But rock and roll is killing the country music business by about 1960. So he goes in the studio and he comes up with a sound that he calls the Nashville sound. And a great example of a Nashville sound song would be Patsy Cline's Crazy. So we've got two options. One, Sheila, you sing Crazy by Patsy Cline, or whatever you want. So go ahead whenever you're ready. All right, I keep fishing and I'm getting nowhere. It looks like I'm singing today. I tried. Riding through the city of New Orleans. Even right there. Look, when he was a young lad, he made these business cards and he would go in and out of honky tonks in East Tennessee. And they would go, boy, what is CGP? And he would say, certified guitar player. He just totally made that up. And they would go, oh, really? Let's see what you got. And as you now know, he just blew them away. They're like, oh my God, this guy's a prodigy. But when rock and roll starts killing the country music business, it's survival. New York starts calling down to Nashville saying, we're going to close down those studios if you don't start selling some records. So he comes up with a sound that he calls the Nashville sound. And a great example of a Nashville sound song would be Patsy Cline's Crazy. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start singing Crazy by Patsy Cline. And you guys better join and help me because I should not be singing, number one. And number two, you will help illustrate for anyone who doesn't know the song. So go ahead and join in if you know Crazy. It goes like this. Crazy, crazy for feeling so lonely. Very good. I got at least 7 of you, and I will take that. Now the thing about Crazy, they take away all the country aspects, and it's kind of like Frank Sinatra sings a country song, smooth and melodic, not too serious. It works though. They start selling records again. To whom? To Northerners, to people north of the Mason-Dixon line. People who called this hillbilly music started calling this the Nashville sound. They also called it countrypolitan, a cosmopolitan country infusion. And then one time they even asked Chet, hey Chet, what does the Nashville sound like? And he stuck his hand in his front pocket and he jingled the change around. And he said, it sounds like money. So he's a little bit cynical about this style that he creates. But he starts rebelling, or I should say, he has a rebellion on his hands where he's got all these artists who are not happy with how overproduced he is. Who's ever heard of the Nashville sound, and also who's heard of
outlaw country. All right, that would be Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson throwing Johnny Cash. They have this whole rebellion where they get together, they grow their beards long now, they're growing their hair long, and they're not doing this clean-cut Nashville sound way anymore. So if you fast forward to today, people are saying we're in a new outlaw period. Who's ever heard of Sturgill Simpson? Anybody? It's amazing. He won a Grammy for Best Country Album. Nobody knows who this guy is. Who's heard of Chris Stapleton at the very least? All right, he does a pretty good job bridging the gap between what they're calling pop country and alt country, or I'll just call it new outlaw. All right, here's what I'll do then. Can I find one artist we will all agree, at the very least, has not changed her country sound one bit from her very first country album at the age of 16, and that's Taylor Swift. At least we can all agree that Viv, you looked at me like I lost my mind. Taylor Swift is real. All right, fine. Taylor's not country anymore, but listen, she sings about her failed relationships every single song. So that's as country as you can possibly get. So you take it up with Taylor. She has $361 million at the age of 29. Or take a seat next to Chet, grab a photo, and I won't make you sing, but I'm going to stand over there and say, Miley Cyrus, Party in the USA is the second greatest country song of all time. You're looking at me like I lost my mind, Jen. I can't believe it's a party in the USA. That's country music. All right, fine. That's not country. No, at the last state capitol in the United States built by slave labor. Very soon after this was complete, Tennessee had a decision to make in 1861. Are they not going to enter into the Civil War? And if they do, what side to take? And at the very last moment, they joined the Confederate States of America. Now, when you look at the American flag at the very top, that came down, replaced by take a wild guess. What kind of flag? Confederate flag. Looked a little bit different than what we call the Confederate flag today. It was actually called the Stars and Bars. And so when the Stars and Bars goes up, look at the Tennessee state flag. That actually was not finished. The design was actually finished in 1910. And if you look at those three stars, does anyone know what those stand for? You learn this in Tennessee state history when you're in third grade. All right, they're East Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, and West Tennessee. Who's ever heard of West Virginia? Where the heck did that come from? Came from Virginia. They split from Virginia at the start of the Civil War, joined the North. East Tennessee came that close to doing the exact same thing. And there was a guy in town that really exemplified this divide that was going on, and his name was Captain William Driver. And he was from the great state of Massachusetts, and he sailed the high seas his entire life as a merchant, and then he moved down south to retire. For the same reason, a lot of Northerners moved down south to retire. And why is that? Anybody? Because it's weather. Yeah, and I've had two people from New Jersey, they'll right in a row go, taxes? And so that's an alternate explanation. New Jersey does have a high state tax rate. So, sure, I had tax rate in 1861. I have no idea what it was, but he said it was weather. He said it was better weather down here, and then he has a flag that he said was on the mast of every ship he sailed, and he called this American flag Old Glory. Said it reminded him of his glory days when he was on the high seas, and he takes this with him and spreads it on the facade of his home. Every chance he could get, every holiday, every 4th of July, he would say, this is my Old Glory, and then when Tennessee declared for the Confederacy, he takes it and spreads it on the facade of his home one more time. Said he got knocks on the door, freshly minted Confederate soldiers that he described as boys, so apparently very young men, saying, Captain Driver, you better take that flag down now, we'll set your whole house on fire. And I have no idea if they sounded like that. That's just the voice I hear in my head. And he would say, boys, you are welcome to attempt and remove this flag. You will, however, need to remove me in order to do it. But he knew he couldn't keep doing that. He decides to take it down and sew it in the lining of a bed quilt. And he keeps his quilt on his bed for the duration of what he thought was an occupation or an outright rebellion on the part of his adopted state of Tennessee. 8 months later, this is the first southern capital to fall to the north. Guess who shows up on the Capitol steps with a quilt under his arm and a knife in the other hand, demanding to speak to the commanding officer, Captain William Driver. He starts opening up the stitching, pulls out Old Glory, hands it to them, and they raise it atop the Tennessee State Capitol. All right, those of you who took a civics class in the United States, what's our nickname for all American flags? It is Old Glory, and that comes from this incident right here in Nashville, Tennessee. So if you want to see Old Glory, it's at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. I'm going to warn you, if you actually go to see it, you're going to see 2 Old Glories. So let me tell you what happened. Captain Driver's niece and his daughter started fighting one another publicly, each claiming the other was a liar and that they each had the real Old Glory. So what will drag you right down to the mud every time? family squabbles. Those of you in a family squabble, do not worry, it enters into U.S. history as well. Speaking of squabbles, did you also know there was another period in our history where we believed that your chromosomal pair should determine your right to vote? And that's called women's suffrage, and we're all going downhill from here, but we're going downhill physically, not metaphorically. So follow me this way, y'all. But look at this architecture. This is called Beaux-Arts architecture. French 4, where are my French speakers? When this goes up, it's 1910 when it's complete, and guess what? Guess what happens 9 years later? We're trying to decide in this country if your XX or XY chromosomal pairs determine your right to vote. See, if I keep saying it that way, it sounds stupid, which is why I keep doing it. So take a look at the Beaux-Arts architecture. If you ever go inside, the bathroom that gets the attention is a men's room. I can't take a big group in there, but individually, if you want to see their Art Deco men's room, you just knock on the door, male, female, doesn't matter, and you go right in, you can actually see it. But it contrasts a lot with all the Beaux-Arts architecture that's actually in the lobby as well. But if you want to go back to 1919, we finally get Congress to act, and they actually, 2/3 of Congress agree. Time to pass the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Here in the United States, though, that's not the end of the story. What do you have to do after you get it passed? Then you got to get it ratified. 75% of the states have to agree that it should be law. And guess what happens on women's suffrage? Almost 75% of the states vote yes. Almost 25% vote no. And one state tied right in the middle. And which one was that? It was Michigan. Very good. It was Tennessee, obviously. Why else would I be mentioning it? Right here, 48-48, even split. Nobody in the nation knows what to do. There is nothing in our Constitution that says in the event of a tie, you do A, B, and C. So they tell these reps, go vote again. Well, they vote again and they tie again. Nobody had a reason to change until professional lobbyists start descending on Nashville, Tennessee, staying at the only 5-star hotel within walking distance of the Capitol, wheeling and dealing, whining and dining, trying to get one person to flip. And none of this works until a woman who is not a professional lobbyist is able to influence one of the younger assemblymen and get him to change his mind. Am I going to spoil this if I tell you women's suffrage passed? I hope you guys knew this. It's been almost 100 years. What you might not know, though, what was the relationship between this woman and this man, that she got him not just to vote yes on suffrage for Tennessee and pass it here, passed it for the entire nation. It was his. Viv, you're thinking yoga instructor. I can totally tell by your body. How dare you, Viv? I would never. All right, those of you who thought yoga instructor or third floor, that is my fault. I gave you so many salacious details on this tour. You would assume that I was doing it all over again. I'll give you a hint. This woman in my life can get me to do anything she wants. Mother, what are you trying to say, Sheila? That I have mother issues? Because you're right, I do. Harry Burns' mother steps in the picture, and you can read her letter to her son to this day. I'll paraphrase. Harry, this is your mother. It is my dream to be able to vote by the time I die. You are in an unprecedented position to help make that happen. She lists some family business, and at the end it says, be a good boy and vote yay tomorrow. She has a lobbying power that the other lobbyists do not have. And what is that called? It's called guilt, and it works really well. And it's going down the line. Nay, nay, nay. Harry Burns steps up. He's got this paper clutched to his chest that we believe was the letter, and he says, yay. That is the one vote they needed. Tennessee is now in the yes column. They said it was pandemonium. Cheers and groans emanating from the Capitol did not cease for a period of 10 minutes, and there's only one account that says this. If this is true, this is awesome. That Harry Burns was chased to the 3rd-story window of the Capitol. Members of his party were just livid that he broke party line, but he gave a press conference the next day right here at the Hermitage Hotel, and he said essentially the following: I could vote against my party, and I knew that that would be bad, or I could vote against my own mother, and that would have been a lot worse. So those of you who had a mother like mine, this is not an exaggeration, and my mom calls this lobbying power love. Do you want to know what it really is? It's actually guilt, nagging, and disapproval. That is the trifecta. Look, Viv did not deny it right there. And then, if you want to change legislation in your hometown, city, or province, target the mothers of these reps. That is the key. So follow me this way when you're ready, y'all. This is my favorite mural in the entire city. This one to your left is part of the Nashville Walls Project, this official. I do get a kick out of this one, though. This one was done roughly 12 years ago. Basically, there's no social message. It was just like, hey, here's a guy fishing off the side of a balcony. That would be cool. It would be. There's no social message, but sure. This one, though, this is done by 2 professional muralists who go by the name Haircut collectively. One's from Germany, one's from Pakistan. And when this goes up, they don't interpret it for you. If you actually go on the Nashville Walls Project website, they leave it open I thought I was really smart, though. This one seemed really easy to interpret. Has anyone ever seen those bumper stickers people have that say, "Who rescued who?" I go, that's what this is. It's a role reversal. We got a giant dog holding a little girl, just like you might hold a rescue dog in your arms because they are smaller, or a puppy, for example. And then you got this boy depicted as being in a cage, as a rescue dog might be. And it even says, "One day I will rescue your brother too." And then I had a woman on the store go, "Ryan, are you sure about this?" And I go, "Well, I mean, it's open, but I mean, I think it's pretty obvious." She goes, "Take a look at this boy. He's on his cell phone." And I go, "Yeah, I guess he is." He goes, "He is addicted to technology, just like the rest of society. And we all need to put down our phones, escape our cages, and play with our dogs. And then our lives will be so much better." And I said, "Ma'am, I have no idea if that is right, but that is awesome." And I'm going to share that with all my groups from now until the end of time, until I had a young lad on this tour who was 8 years old, had his phone in his hand the entire time, and he goes, "I have petfinder.com on my phone, and he's trying to find his next rescue dog." And I went, "Oh, okay, bless his heart." Am I right? See, you can be sincere with bless your heart. You don't have to curse people out. All right, so follow me this way when you're ready. Now, guys, I would be cheating you, though, if I actually didn't tell you about this one right here. That is the best artwork in the city, if you want my personal opinion. When this goes up, though, guess what everyone asks? "Hey, man, that's great. Who's that woman?" They kept asking me this over and over and over. Unlike the Bobby Hotel, I figured this one out. This took a lot of digging. I contacted the Nashville Walls Project. She goes, "Ryan, this is a Roan." And I go, "I don't know what that means." She goes, that's like saying it's a Banksy, but for murals." And I go, "All right, that's fine, but who's the woman?" She goes, "This is an anonymous representation of beauty." And I go, "That is a non-answer." And so I contacted other artists I knew in town. I have a friend by the name of Nathan Brown. He does tons of murals in the Gulch neighborhood. He goes, "Ryan, this guy is like the Michael Jordan of murals. I don't think there's any way in heck that he's going to tell you that." And then I got fed up and found an email online purportedly belonging to Roan. And I said, "Hey, Roan, if this is you, this is Ryan, and I'm a tour guide in Nashville. Will you please tell me who this is?" He wrote me back in 15 minutes. He said, "Sure, it's Teresa Oman, an Australian model." I looked it up. It looks just like her. There you go. People that say you can't do something, they have no idea what they're talking about. You take the easiest solution to your problem and then just go with that and see if that works. I have emailed Tim McGraw, though, 3 times to see if this story I keep hearing about him in town is true, and he has not emailed me back. I don't know. What is he doing? Do you think he's busy? I have no idea what he's doing. Arlene, you're friends with Tim McGraw, so you just hook us up if you don't mind. Let him know. All right, now, what Roan likes to do is contrast the old and the new. He'll take a beautiful model, put her on the side of an old building, and he does this all over the world. This is perfect for what we're going to talk about next, whereby we literally have the newest building in Nashville right next to our oldest church, so follow me this way. When you come up here to the corner, though, here, you can see the oldest church in Nashville. Technically, not the oldest standing church. If you look way down there, you can actually see St. Mary's Catholic Church. That's got that crucifix and that steeple right there. But first church ever built in what would later become Nashville. You can see the breakdown actually right here on the right-hand side. When we cross the street and stand in the shade, you'll see this. And the first one burned to the ground. The second one burned to the ground. And then we had an architect, the same guy that designed the Capitol that you just saw. He said, "I will build you a First Presbyterian that will never burn to the ground." And he was right, it hasn't, but he said he wanted creative control. Take a look at the facade here, guys. Follow me this way. This is called Egyptian Revival architecture. This is very odd for the United States. There's always something musical going on in this town. Look right up there. Look at that ball with the 2 wings extending to the right and left. All right. I had one guy, I think I've only had one guy in the history of this tour. He was an archaeologist, and he goes, "I know what that is. That's Amun-Ra." And I go, "You're absolutely right." Who's ever heard of Amun-Ra, the sun god, main god of the ancient Egyptian religion? Now, what's it doing up there? But this is the middle of the buckle of the Bible Belt, y'all. People from Shreveport will often argue with me and say that they are the middle of the buckle because they have more churches per capita. Nashville and Shreveport are almost tied. They do call Nashville, though, the Protestant Vatican because of all the church groups that have their headquarters here. And so, that is not a crucifix if you did not know. Now, William Strickland, he wanted to do an Egyptian revival building. There are some people that think he was a troll. Who speaks internet on this tour and can tell me what a troll is? I had a guy, he was 15, and he goes, "I'll explain a troll to your group." Imagine I went on Ryan's Facebook page and wrote, "Marcus Mariota sucks." I mean, that would be perfect. That'd be anytime you're trying to get a negative reaction out of somebody online, you're a troll. There's one option. I think he just thought it looked cool. This was part of the Egyptian revival. I just think he said, hey, that looks kind of cool. And then later they found out it was raw. Too late. Part of the National Register of Historic Places is protecting this, so this is not going anywhere. Let me give you one last story, though, filled with irony before we head down towards the Ryman. Do you know what we haven't done in a while? Generational test. Let's do one more. Y'all ready? Who's heard of Maxwell House Coffee? Anybody? Did you know that this went off the air 22 years ago? But Cleo, Maxwell House Coffee is good. Why didn't you say anything, Cleo? Look, you can see that it's common knowledge. She had no idea. You want me to do another one? This went off the air in 1974 in the United States. Winston tastes good like how could you possibly know that, Viv? You were 46 years old, so there's no possible way you could have known that. Guess what? Maxwell House Coffee was based on a hotel called the Maxwell House. It actually stood in this plaza, actually right down there, occupying actually up to the corner of 4th Avenue as well. And it was a hotel which was started by the Cheek family, who actually had a guest in 2007. In 1907, guess who comes to town? Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt does a whole campaign through the city. He's actually campaigning for Howard Taft for president. Ends up at the Hermitage, Andrew Jackson's estate. And the Cheek family gave Teddy, they said, a cup of their coffee, and he loved it so much that he turned to his staff and said it was, take a wild guess, good to the last drop. And I believe that because marketers never lie to us. So I would go ahead and take it. There are no sources that say he said that. They use this story to market their coffee. Don't feel sorry for the Cheeks. They invested most of their money in a company called IBM. So they're doing just fine. They are the 3rd wealthiest family in the state of Tennessee. Doesn't stand for irony though. What's on the corner now? Look at those corporate logos here under that umbrella. It is a Starbucks. Oh, and of course it is. If that were a Starbucks hotel, then that would be full circle. But that's the best I can do. So follow me this way, guys. Look at the very top, y'all. You can even see to this day, it still says Union Gospel Tabernacle, 1891. Again, it was a church before it was ever home to the Grand Ole Opry. Now, how did this church get here? There was a preacher who came to town in the 1880s from the great state of Georgia, and he saw 3 activities in town that he did not like. Did we mention these on this tour, Arlene? I totally forgot. They were polite conversation, reading, and yoga. All right, there are no kids around. Drinking, gambling, and prostitution. Imagine your bottom line depended on those 3 things. You might not be happy with a charismatic preacher coming into town telling everybody they had to stop. That's exactly what Pastor Sam Jones was doing till he gets a guest, a guy by the name of Tom Ryman, who owns 35 riverboats going up and down the Cumberland River, also has some extracurricular activities going on in his boats, and he goes to one of these tent revival sermons ostensibly to run this guy out of town. He's bad for business, and guess what happens? The opposite. He listened to one sermon and he converted wholeheartedly by the end of the first sermon he heard. He dedicates $100,000. That's about 2.4 million in today's money to create the Union Gospel Tabernacle. Fast forward to the 40s, that's where WSM Radio says, we want to do a live version of the Grand Ole Opry. The church is ready to sell. They're in a lot of debt. But they sit all these country artists down. They say, look, this being a former church, no drinking, no gambling, no smoking, no chasing women, no cursing. If you would not do it at church on a Sunday morning, you cannot do it here. So what did the country artists do? They started walking the straight and narrow, and they never touched alcohol again. And they were good boys and girls for the rest of their lives. And they all lived happily. How cynical you all would become that you do not believe. That, have you ever heard the phrase, temptation is right around the corner? In this case, it's literally true. Yeah, what's the name of the world's most famous honky-tonk? Tootsie's. It's got a back entrance. Follow me this way. Look at the footprints. Here's a quote from Willie Nelson. He said it was 17 steps from the Ryman to Tootsie's and 34 steps going back. So if that doesn't illustrate what they were doing here at Tootsie's, I don't know what else will. And we're going to go inside. All right, now guys, when you stand here, we're going to look at this purple color. So if you want to know where it came from, first of all, look at Tootsie. Look at that black and white photo right there. She's got the horn-rimmed glasses and the beehive hairdo. This was called Mom's Place. She actually hired this guy to paint the lobby. What color? White. And then he painted it what other color? Purple. And they thought Tootsie was going to lose her mind, but she goes, well, I like orchids anyway. Just paint the whole damn building purple. We'll call it Tootsie's Orchid Lounge. It was by accident that it had both the name and the color. Now, here's the deal, guys. You're about to walk the line. Who's ever heard the Johnny Cash song Walk the Line? And they even made a hit movie about his life called Walk the Line. It's the line between sin and redemption. You guys get to decide which side is sin and which side is redemption. I guess you could find a redemption of sorts on this. If you're doing it in moderation, you'll be fine. But wherever you go, whatever you do, you now need to go walk your own line. If this tour has done anything, I hope it's increased your appreciation of Nashville, of the Southern experience, and also the human experience, because we all walk a line. You just make sure that yours leads towards something you enjoy. And right here in front of Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, I want to give you a heartfelt thank you for completing the Live Nashville Walk and Tour. Thank you guys. I've had a great time.